Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? As the Saints continue rolling through OTAs right now, one of the biggest storylines that has started to pop up has been what's happening on the offensive line. And we all have talked about this a ton, and we understand the issue with the offensive line. The Saints have two. Dennis Allen said it point blank. They've got two positions where they know they're starters, and we know it. I mean, it's Eric McCoy at center, and it's Cesar Ruiz at right guard. To say you are unsettled on the offensive line is an understatement. You have three starting jobs that are wide open. Andrus Peat is obviously no longer in New Orleans. He's now with the Raiders. James Hurst retired, and we still don't know what to expect from Trevor Penning. You drafted Taliesin Fuanga. There's Nick Saldiveri. You went and signed three veteran offensive linemen this offseason in free agency. So you got a lot of bodies. You just don't have a lot of answers. But what was interesting about OTAs to this point are two things that have transpired with recent draft picks. It's Trevor Penning playing right tackle, and Nick Saldiveri earlier this week got all the first-team reps at left guard. So I want to take both of these kind of in order, and I want to sort of jam through it a little bit. But I want to start with Penning because this is a new offense, and it's a new position for him, and you would assume it's sort of a mental reset for a guy that was a first-round draft pick, was jamming through his rookie training camp, got injured in that last preseason game, and effectively missed his entire rookie season. Year two, they tried to make him a left tackle, and it just didn't go well at the start of the season. He got benched and became effectively the tackle eligible for the remainder of year two. And now this really feels like a make-or-break season for him, but it's a new position. It's a new offensive concept with Clint Kubiak, and it's one that may serve him well.
It's good for sure. I mean, I learned, a lot of stuff last year. It was definitely, kind of a struggle, but I think I've, learned a lot out of it. I think it's going to make me a better player in the end. I went into the off season, figured out the stuff I needed to work on. I actually had an off season with, being healthy for the first time in the off season for a while. So yeah, it was good to be able to work on some things.
I do want to remind you, and I don't want to come forward with any misgivings. When the Saints drafted Trevor Penning, I was good with it. Because for two reasons. Number one, the Saints have had a pretty strong draft history with offensive linemen, and I would say especially small school offensive linemen. Zach Strief was a seventh rounder out of Northwestern. I get Northwestern's in the Big Ten, but you took that dude in round 7 and he became a starting right tackle for you. Teron Armstead, you took in round 3 out of Pine Bluff. You spotted that dude out of a SWAC school, took him in round 3, and by the end of his rookie year, was your left tackle and became your franchise left tackle. Jari Evans could very well be going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You took in round 4 out of Bloomsburg. To this day, I think Bloomsburg's in Pennsylvania, maybe. Maybe Jari's from Pennsylvania, whatever. I mean, after Willie Roaf, you could make the argument that Jari Evans is the best offensive lineman in the history of your organization. Jermon Bushrod, a fourth rounder out of Towson. Carl Nix, he was out of Nebraska, but you took him in round 5 and you drafted what ended up becoming one of the best interior offensive linemen in the game. So the Saints' track record of identifying small school or mid-late round offensive linemen and turning them into great starting players was very good. That, number one. Number two, do you remember Trevor Penning's rookie training camp? We turned a lot of our content here into these shorts and memes and everything because I was celebrating Trevor Penning every day. Dude kept getting kicked out of practice. Do you remember this? Trevor Penning kept getting kicked out of practice every day because he kept fighting with defensive linemen. He was going to and through the whistle, and veterans were getting pissed at him. And you know what? I get it. If I'm a veteran, I'm like, simmer down, young man. We don't need that right now. We're just trying to get through training camp. We don't need you, bullying people through the whistle. But I didn't care because that's a physical dude, and I want nasty in my offensive lineman. And he showed that. And we were excited about him. And then he got hurt in the last preseason game and then missed basically his whole rookie year. Like, how different might Penning's path have been up to this point without that injury? I don't know. Maybe he still wouldn't have been a starting caliber, but it would be disingenuous to say that at no point have we been excited about Penning, because we were. Last year, let a ton of doubt creep in because it didn't work at left tackle. Okay. It takes a degree of humility both from the player and the organization to say maybe you're not going to be a left tackle. But in this new scheme, it might work on the right side. So Penning was asked about the different look being on the right side as opposed to the left.
I mean, it's not as much as you would probably think, because the whole offseason we trained down when I'm down in Frisco with Duke Manyweather. We trained both sides, so it's already kind of, I've kind of been there already. We work on that down there, like 50-50 pretty much. So it's not too much of a change.
I just want to remind you. So there's Trevor Penning telling you, like, I've been working left and right when I'm in my offseason training. I want to remind you this. A few weeks back, John Stinchcomb, great former Saint, second-round pick, 37 overall, the University of Georgia, similar to Penning, didn't really become a starter until year 3, and then became your franchise right tackle, who was the right tackle on the Super Bowl team back in 2009. John Stinchcomb effectively said the same thing.
There is a transition. There is a muscle memory element to how you feel and how you set. But with that said, it just comes with reps and time. I think the bigger jump is from tackle to the inside position rather than from right to left. So much is made about the left tackle being the premier position, as if right tackle doesn't face the exact same personnel. The plays are still the same. The old adage that you're protecting your quarterback's blind side is a little bit of garbage, because it's field side and tight side. So if a quarterback is on the right hash, then most of the reads are to his left, which means the back of his helmet is facing the right side. So I don't think it's as big of a difference between the ask of what you are demanding of your left tackle from your right tackle.
John Stinchcomb again here on AFR a few weeks ago. I know I've already played the heck out of that soundbite. I feel like I'm going to play it a ton more if Penning continues to stick on the right side. What is significant about what's happening now, and I don't want to overstate it, there are no pads on. This is not full speed. This is not full contact. This is OTAs. This is voluntary, organized team activities. It's glorified walkthroughs is what this is. Eventually, they'll get to mini camp, and then they'll get to training camp, and they'll have preseason, and they'll have joint practices, and we're going to learn a lot more. So I'm not trying to overstate it, but you have to take a first step, and the first step seems to be a positive one. I would feel dramatically different if today Penning wasn't even running with the ones at OTAs on either side. That would be a much different feeling if you were just sliding Oli Udoh in as your right tackle right now, and Penning was just trying to earn reps somewhere. Now, the other part of this as well is Nick Saldiveri. So when the Saints had media availability on Tuesday at their OTAs, Saldiveri took all of the reps with the first team at left guard. The first media availability, Shane Lemieux, who's one of the veteran free agents the Saints signed, and Saldiveri were splitting reps at left tackle. This may very well, candidly, this may just be giving each guy opportunities with reps to see how it goes. But you can allow your mind to wander to a scenario, a what-if scenario. If Taliese Fuanga starts at left tackle as a rookie, and Trevor Penning finds a home at right tackle, and Nick Saldiveri finds a home at left guard, then all 5 of your starters suddenly are your 5 draft picks, and 3 of them are on rookie deals. Saldiveri, Penning, and Fuanga. Then, of course, you got McCoy and Ruiz. Now you can start to look at a cohesive unit, which the Saints had for so many years, that here really, since they had to draft McCoy and Ruiz in back-to-back years, really you've seen that unit start to degrade. The injury to Ramczyk, Armstead leaving in free agency, Pete's on-again, off-again situation, Penning's inconsistency. Like, it's led to the last 3 years being really challenging on the offensive line for New Orleans. This would seem to solidify it if you get there. Now, if it were that cut and dry, like, it's fair to ask the question, if the Saints really loved Nick Saldiveri and thought he was going to be the starter, and they loved Trevor Penning and felt like he was ready, then you wouldn't have gone out in the offseason and signed Shane Lemieux and Oli Udoh and Lucas Patrick. You wouldn't have gone and added these 3 veteran linemen. Lemieux is a center guard, Udoh is a guard tackle, and Patrick can play literally any of the 5 positions on the offensive line. So, you wouldn't have gone and signed all of those guys if you were supremely confident in the guys you had. That's just truth. So, actions speak louder than words. The actions map to, there's uncertainty and doubt here. We'll see ultimately if he gets there. But again, this is a good first step. And the other thing that I think we have to sort of map to a little bit here, especially with Clint Kubiak. Now, remember, Dennis Allen is the head coach, but he's a defensive guy. So in some respects, it's fair to say, and I think you would agree with this, that Clint Kubiak is kind of like the head coach of the offense. Well, Clint Kubiak just came from San Francisco. And for a long time, San Francisco, especially when they were with Harbaugh, built their lines of scrimmage through the draft. If it was Mike McGlinchey and Mike Upati, Trent Williams, both sides of the ball. Eric Armstead. We know the long list of dudes that they've drafted in San Francisco on both sides of the ball. Well, that's not been the case of late since John Lynch became the GM. The starting offensive line this year for San Francisco, you have Trent Williams, who's your left tackle, former first rounder, all pro, everything. But Aaron Banks is a second rounder. Jake Brendel is a former UDFA. Right guard John Feliciano is a 4th rounder. And Colton McKivitz, their right tackle, is a 5th rounder. So San Francisco has invested more in their skill guys. As a matter of fact, their offensive line coach, Chris Forrester, this week at OTA said, quote, this is the offensive line coach. The offensive line coach in San Francisco said, quote, invest in guys that touch the ball. Guys that can touch the ball and score touchdowns. And then there's a range of guys, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, that will find starting offensive linemen in. Again, so that's the mentality in San Francisco where Clint Kubiak's coming from. Yes, you used a first-round pick on Taliese Fuanga, but even Forrester, again, the offensive line coach, said, look, if you have a guy like Trent Williams, of course you pick him. And so if you're the Saints, you can look and say, maybe Fuanga is this version of Trent Williams. But all these other guys, Saldiveri and the other guys you have in place, maybe they ultimately become this version of what we're talking about. Because what we're looking at right now with the Saints, Fuanga, Ruiz, Penning, all first rounders. McCoy was a 2nd rounder who was your first pick of that draft. And then there's Saldiveri, who's a 4. But yes, right now you have a tremendous amount of draft capital invested in your offensive line. I'm going to be interested to see, and this is something we'll only learn in time, if Kubiak's influence maps to what San Francisco has done, which is to say, hey, stop investing in the draft in the offensive line. You can find starters on the offensive line anywhere in the draft. Invest in your skill guys. Look at Kansas City. That's an offensive line that no one would consider among the best in the league. Creed Humphrey's a great center, but that's an offensive line that's had a tremendous amount of issues, but you just have the best quarterback and skill guys around him, and you have the best offense, and so you're the best team. Maybe there's some synergies there. We'll see if that's how it maps out with the Saints in the future. But for right now, coming through OTAs, there's at least a sign, a hope, that the arrow is pointing up on that offensive line. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.